So this is my third attempt at making this video. The second attempt wasn't bad, but we like to limit test on this channel, so third time's the charm, hopefully. If not, I will probably do it again. I'm about to be out of work for a while, so I'll have time. Anyways, this is my understanding of the Llamas with Hats epilogue. For those of you who are familiar with the series and you probably haven't seen it in a while, Film Cow, the original channel that uploaded the series, recently came out with an epilogue like 2 months ago, and it was amazing. I would like to say that if you were a fan of the original series, go check out the epilogue, but I will say it's kind of different. It's vastly different from the original series. And I know the original series did go from goofy, oh, Carl's a dangerous sociopath with a long history of violence, so that's supposed to be the running gag, but it kind of devolved into him having like a psychological breakdown, got a little bit deep in that, not too deep. This this is actual surrealism. This is a surreal experience. This is midnight gospel levels of surrealism, and I don't want to bring that up to compare one series to another, like let that be the standard that I'm comparing it to. The reason why I bring that up is because there was a point in this that I kind of didn't understand, but I was able to use the midnight gospel as a reference to further my research in this. So I'm going to bring that up later when we get to that part, but for now, if you decide to watch this, I hope you enjoy what I have to say. I hope I see somebody make, I don't know, a response, somebody make a continuation. Maybe I missed some things. Maybe I'm kind of reaching in some parts, and I will clarify where I'm reaching, but there are some things in this that I'm fairly certain that I kind of get the meaning of. I hope you enjoy. So the first point to make is that this is not one of the original episodes from the series. And that's only worth noting because this is framed to be Carl's first kill, or at least the first kill that Paul's been a witness to, or he's found evidence of. This is supposed to be the first time. And the reason why I believe that is because Carl ends the scene by promising that this wouldn't happen again. So, I mean, just off of that, I'm going to assume that this is the first time this has happened. And it's funny because this is actually an inverse of the first episode of the main series. Because in the first episode, he kills a man, he cuts his hands off, cooks them, and eats them. In this, only the hand remains. So it's a parallel from the original. Don't know if that was intentional, but it was funny. Anyways, so in the original recording of this, I had this clip still going, and I forgot that it wasn't muted, so I had to re-record this. But there wasn't much I could really say about this scene. It's a good recap. I mean, this is the end of the original series. This is what happened to when Carl got his way. He wiped out all life on Earth except for himself, and I mean that doesn't last long. So yeah, thanks for watching. So there was a lot that could be said about the transition from scene two into scene three, but there was also music there, so I wasn't going to yeah. And of course I could have just played it in silence, but no, I'd rather not. Anyways, this is purgatory. I believe this is supposed to be a surreal interpretation of purgatory. One, because after Carl manifests these hands, this guy right here, the little heart tube guy, he has no idea what that is, first of all. He doesn't know why Carl can do this. I have a theory about that for the end of the video, but like, this entity doesn't know what that is, and I feel like they should know, which I feel kind of adds some credibility to my point, but again, I could be reaching on that. Anyway, when Carl manifests these and he begins to misbehave, the entity is like, yeah, no, we're done. And so he turns off this space. Carl is just sitting in the stars. So I'm like, oh, it's a waiting room. Because initially he comes in saying, yeah, Carl, we're ready for you. And Carl's like, well, what are you ready for? Like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, that's the question, isn't it? So like, are you ready to go? Like, no, like what's going on? Can't tell him anything. I believe that this heart tube thing is supposed to be again a surreal. I don't want to keep saying the word surreal, but I mean I just think like actual surrealism, like the actual art style. This is the divine. This is the ambiguous voice of the divine because I mean it just said we're ready for you. We, what is we? Are you we? Is somebody else we? How many is we? Or is we a single person? We don't know, right? So I think it's just a purgatory space for Carl to be waiting in. Because I mean, look at this. it's like a hallway. Either I mean, it's designed like a house, but I get hotel vibes for some reason because of all the doors. But it's just the shadows of doors, not even shadows of doorways, just the shadows of doors. How does this space work, right? So I definitely get purgatory vibes from this. So, scene four actually gave me quite a bit to look into, especially Carl's line about thinking Paul was made of moonlight when he first met him. That is reference to the film Gerald's Game, which is based on Stephen King's novel of the same name. Now, I'm going to go into why I think this is specifically referencing the film and not the novel, but first I'm going to give you a brief synopsis if you're not familiar with either. So, in Gerald's Game, Jessie Burlingame and her husband decide to rent out a cabin to experiment with some BDSM. Partway through, Jessie revokes her consent, which we all know and agree here on this channel is allowed. There's no argument around that. Anyway, which her husband did not seem to understand. She defends herself by kicking him in the chest, causing him to die of a heart attack, and so now she's handcuffed to the bed, defenseless, and a figure that she desperately wants to believe isn't looming over her. Anyways, she says, "You're not real. You're made of moonlight." Just to kind of reassure herself, yada yada, the man was real, okay? So, the reason why I believe this is specifically referencing the film, one, the Moonlight Man repeats this line. However, he doesn't repeat it in the novel. He has no spoken lines in the novel. So, I would like to believe that Carl is referencing his his kin, the fellow sociopath, right? I would like to believe he's referencing the sociopath saying that, so it would be from the film, which he does repeat Jesse's line, "You're not real. You're made of moonlight," to let her know that, yeah, no, I was actually there that first night. I was real. Uh, and her response in the film was interesting because in the film she was completely over it by that point. She responds by saying, "You're so much smaller than I remember." If that sounds familiar, you've probably seen that clip somewhere on TikTok. Like I know I've seen it on TikTok a couple of times. Uh, However, in the novel, her recovery wasn't nearly as swift. So she was still recovering. She was still healing, but like she definitely had PTSD, especially by the time the trial came around. And that the trial was not a pleasurable experience in the novel. So that, yeah. But there's I think, a reference to the novel later on. I'll bring that back up. So to reiterate, I believe that it is important to consider this a reference to the movie and not the novel because Carl is meant to be the Moonlight Man. He's the sociopath. And I get it. When you watch this scene, it could be taken as a tender memory that may have hinted at some strong platonic friendship or maybe something more because, whew, the original series, Carl revealed that he did indeed have some photos of Paul that Paul wasn't aware of, and that, I mean, that kind of writes itself. Uh, And another way to view this is the root of a sociopath's obsession, because Joubert was exactly that. The Moonlight Man, he's revealed to be a serial killer, he was a cannibal, and he was a thief. And while Joubert makes that statement that "I thought you were made of moonlight" as a means to tease the protagonist, the victim, uh, Carl means it in a heartfelt manner. So say what you will, I don't think it is an entirely safe position to be in. I don't believe it is really a safe position to be in to be a sociopath's favorite person. Let's say favorite person, right? I don't believe that is a comfortable position to be in. I'm no expert, but like it doesn't sound as safe as you would think. And this is kind of a throwaway point, kind of a side note I kind of just made up. Uh He states that when they were like when they first met, he lost something. Paul had lost something. He was helping him find it. It wasn't anything important though, so he didn't really remember what it was. But in this flashback, sort of, he finds what it was, and it was in fact a pen cap. Which, again, it wasn't anything important. So he was right about that. So of course he wouldn't remember it because it wasn't anything important. I don't, I think it was just a setup for the joke. So I could have just over-explained the joke, but I thought it was a little self. Nope, yep, he was right. It really wasn't anything important, so it makes sense why he didn't remember it. So I was fairly prepared for this scene, not because I knew what was coming, but because I recognized what Paul was talking about in this scene, uh, about the strings that bind us to one another. I remember that this is something that was shown to me in the Midnight Gospel, episode 5, the Annihilation of Joy, the prison episode. And I remember that at the climax of the episode, uh, we're presented with this concept of interconnectedness. It was represented of different characters. They were like heads on a chain of beads, right? Like pearls, which is what this is leading into. Because I found out that this, like in researching for this essay, that is a concept that is meant to represent Indra's net or Indra's pearls, which is a metaphor from East Asian Buddhist philosophy. And I am not a huge buff on organized religion or any of the following practices, so forgive me for any of my misunderstandings. Uh, Anything that I quote unquote claim in this video in relation to this section, it is merely just my understanding from my research. This is all just reading comprehension, so my apologies if I have misunderstood anything. So, Francis H. Cook, an influential figure in the 19th and early 20th centuries, describes Indra's net as follows. Far away in the heavenly abode of the great god Indra, there is a wonderful net which has been hung by some cunning artificer in such a manner that it stretches out infinitely in all directions. In accordance with the extravagant tastes of deities, the artificer has hung a single glittering jewel in each eye of the net, and since the net itself is infinite in dimension, the jewels are infinite in number. There hang the jewels, glittering like stars in the first magnitude, a wonderful sight to behold. If we now arbitrarily select one of these jewels for inspection and look closely at it, we will discover that in its polished surface there are reflected all the other jewels in the net, infinite in number. Not only that, but each of the jewels reflected in this one jewel is also reflecting all other jewels, so that there is an infinite reflecting process occurring. That is a concept to take in. And so, much like the moral of episode 5 of Midnight Gospel, again, I recommend the series. The point is that we are all interconnected, as the value of one life is infinitely reflected by the lives of others, and vice versa. And I can imagine, just from my understanding of this writing, again, I'm no expert of practices and all that, uh, taking a life is a grave error. It is a grave wrong. Because to remove a single pearl from Indra's net. Not the way that Cook described. Cook described as like picking one out to observe it. This I'm talking about to completely sever a pearl from Indra's net, I believe would ruin it now. Because as it would infinitely reflect one pearl, or one pearl would infinitely reflect all others, and all others would infinitely reflect that one. Now all others are simply infinitely reflecting the missing piece. It's reflecting that emptiness now, right? Thus, it ruins the perfection of the pearls, of the net. And so Paul essentially tells Carl in this scene that you got just as you wanted. You cut all the strings off until there were none left for you to sever. You are the pearl that rolled away. But of course, we know that Carl wanted Paul to be alive still. He wanted to keep that connection, but that's not how that works. Like you don't get to commit such atrocities and be like, but I kind of want someone to stand by me through all my atrocities. Like, no, that's kind of not how that works. Also, side note, the entire time I've been calling this Paul, it's clearly not Paul. This is a manifestation of Carl's own self-loathing, his guilt, his self-resentment. And similar to the eerie floating mask from Paul's face, or resembling Paul's face from the original series, I think it was like episodes 8 through 11, 8 or 9, I'm not sure. Uh, And it's funny, again, this is another inverse from the main series because that was a floating mask of Paul's face. This is a faceless Paul. So again, it's funny. So I know I got a weird sense of humor, whatever, but this scene is funny, or at least how we lead into this scene is funny. Because like that whole last scene, that whole interconnectedness thing, like that was based off a game of Truth or Dare that Carl decided to do because Paul didn't want to go out because it was raining, right? So Carl's like, well, Truth or Dare. Paul's like, Truth. Why'd you leave me, Paul? Right? That whole epiphany just dropped on Carl's plate. I don't like that. I choose Dare, right? Paul's like, I dare you to go sit in a dark hole. Just leave us alone. Like that's all you gotta do. Just sit in a dark hole for all of eternity, right? So now we have Carl, we have a deep dark hole, and once again, the divine, again, my belief that is the surreal interpretation of the divine, has returned, and he's like, yeah, you're on the wrong track. See, Carl has a problem. Carl went into this thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna atone this way, and then eventually Paul will forgive me. The divine is like, see, that's your problem. You keep thinking that you're going to get forgiveness. You, follow me here, you are irredeemable. You are not worthy of forgiveness. You do not deserve forgiveness at all. You should indeed seek to atone. You should seek your penance, but only your punishment. You will not, you will get no relief for this. You do not deserve that, right? Uh, because he's like, Carl, you're not really sorry. You're just upset that something that you care for was taken from you. As collateral. Again, it wasn't it wasn't a collateral damage situation, but like, yeah, you're just mad that in doing what you wanted to do, you lost something that you really wanted, right? What do woo? Of course, Carl does not care for the sentiment, and well, he has hands. The tube does not have hands. We know how this interaction goes. So on to the next scene. All right, this scene. Your guess is as good as mine. And I really do mean that. So like if anybody has a better idea for this scene, I really hope I see more videos explaining this because this epilogue was amazing, right? Um it was in making the recording and making the script that I kind of Frankenstein together an idea. And this is one of the stretches. This is going to be a big stretch. So, like I was saying earlier with Gerald's game, the ending from the novel, Jessie was not as uh, over the experience as she was in the film. Like she couldn't just stay in court and respond to him. Well, he didn't say anything in court, but he lunged at her and she just left the courthouse. Understandable, right? Uh, she was still on the road to recovery. She still has some PTSD to deal with. I feel like this is like taking from the novel, right? This is still the tormented souls experiencing a metaphysical PTSD, right? I don't know if Paul is or Carl is hallucinating this, like if this is not real, or if these are like actual tormented souls. Um, this could also relate to Indra's net. This could be what it looks like when you remove one of the pearls. This is the reflection, the endless reflection of emptiness, right? Because it's just tormented souls. And they seem to be tormented just by Carl's existence. Because I mean, he's not alive anymore. He drowned. He's dead. But like here they are, still tormented. If they are real and not just his imagination. So again, big stretch on this scene, but if that isn't correct or anywhere near what Film Cal was going for, then I have no idea what's going on here. I mean, obviously, it's a mountain of screaming heads dancing with Carl, but like, you know, uh, the dancing could just be how we intermingle with one another in life. You know, it's like a dance of mortality, I guess. But I think that's all I have for this scene. Okay, so this quote unquote scene is really just an interesting transition. I don't really think it represents anything, but if I had to come up with something, I feel like this is representative of Carl walking deeper into his own subconscious. Kind of like Finn from Adventure Time walking into the vault, right? Because I mean, you see the destruction in the background, but he's kind of walking with this delusion, right? And it's funny because at the end of this section, he does uncover a truth that he kind of kept from himself, and that's the truth that Paul is dead. He killed Paul, and he's actually looking at it and he's like, how did I forget that too? Like how can I forget? This person was so important to me. How did I forget that they not only died, but I killed them, right? Uh and just to kind of gush about this imagery, it's amazing. It's eerily beautiful. It is macabre, right? I mean, the dark red, the exultating light, the realistic llama skeleton. Like I know that it was a realistic skeleton in the original series too, which also kind of offset the cartoony style. Like it this is eerily beautiful. Like I love this shot. Uh yeah, no, I just really love this scene. So we come back to the purgatory hallway, rain increasing, floodwaters coming up. Carl finally reaches his epiphany that, you know, maybe everyone would be better off. Not if they learned to stay away from me, but if I learned to stay away from them, right? Uh, an epiphany that like shows his growth, like taking responsibility for his actions, his wrongdoings are his fault, and the recovery of them is going to be his responsibility, but not as Carl, right? He's not, he can't be Carl anymore. And that was kind of the point of this, which is why I specifically believe this was meant to be an ego death, because after this, Paul does it. he becomes the acorn, and the acorn eventually becomes a big, beautiful tree, just like the last acorn tried to get him to do. Uh, I believe this is Paul becoming the new world tree, and maybe, just maybe, life will find a way, right? That's the expression, life finds a way. Because actually, in this shot, you'll see after this, bam, galaxy, galaxy. So maybe life. But Carl would never know what would become of his penance, right? He'll never know what would come of uh, him accepting responsibility for his actions. Like he's never going to know because Carl no longer exists. There's only this tree now. So if life comes back and all is right, like all is righted in the world, cool. But Carl does not deserve the satisfaction to know that he did a good thing by doing this, right? He's not allowed to know that because he is an irredeemable sociopath with a long history of violence. Now, it was in my pursuit to understand the final shot of the tree growing in the desert. Ultimately, it just turned out it was just probably just surrealism, right? That's just elements of surrealism. A tree in the desert, that doesn't make sense. Like this much light under the night, like it doesn't make sense. Surrealism, right? Um, but also the hand thing, I think, and this is a stretch, it's this concept or this artistic element called the Manus Dei, the hand of God, which is a symbol often depicted in Judeo-Christian mythology. Sort of like a lot of Renaissance paintings of God just being depicted as a hand. But also in Salvador Dali, a famous surrealist artist, the surrealist artist, like that's like the first one you learn about in like art classes. He often used hands as a way to symbolize power, creation, destruction, and we did see Paul gain this power, and he did use it for destruction, but then he used it to create by planting the acorn, right? Um, another thing about why I think he develops this. So Paul or Carl thinks he might developed it because he ate too many hands. The divine doesn't know why he developed it. So looping back to the whole interconnectedness thing, right? There is a short story by American author Andy Weir. Is it Weir or Were? Hold on. I'm gonna look this up. I'm not gonna look it up right now, but there's American writer Andy Weir. He wrote a short story by the name of The Egg. You probably seen what's the Duck Channel's name? Kurzgesagt? Kurzgesagt. Boom. Kurzgesagt has a video explaining the egg. Basically, God is the combined consciousness of all living things. Like that is in essence the power of God, just all consciousness connected as one, right? And because Paul or Carl effectively wiped out all life, the power of God was just concentrated into him, and that manifested in him being able to use the Manus Dei, the hands of God. Again, big stretch, not sure about that, but film cow, you see this video, how crazy am I? Like I know I'm crazy, but like how how bad did I do in this video? Uh it was my first time doing a video essay. I am going to have a lot of free time from work in the coming weeks, so I kind of want to crank out a few of these. I don't know what other topics I'm going to do, but I'm interested in media like this, so I'm probably going to uh, cover another interesting series. And I think I know exactly which one I have in mind and the topic I want to propose for it. So if you enjoy this, please give me a sign. I'm not going to say follow. I'm not going to say like. I'm not going to say like. I'm not going to make a fuss about that. But just like, give me a sign that I should keep this going. Right? Thanks for watching.